Good morning, everybody. December 3rd, Thursday of virtual week, dual credit, U.S. history, progressive period. Yesterday, you had a work day in which you read the rest of chapter 20. You had a focus on some questions at the end of the chapter. A question, such as, and that question was, define the square deal, the new nationalism, and the new freedom, and explain why these programs are key to understanding national politics during the progressive era. So I'm sure you were able to do that as you work through your text. Today, I want to focus on the great Teddy Roosevelt. I want to take 10 minutes or so to hit some highlights as we understand the increasing role of the president in the United States during the progressive period. Remember, the progressive period is a time of great change. And with President Roosevelt, we're going to take a look at his zeal for eliminating corruption. So he is the progressive president as we walk through these few slides I have prepared for you. And we are looking at page 627, 29, 30, right in that area. Teddy Roosevelt's background is that he had done a lot of things, such as being a cattleman. He comes from out west, where he starts to love nature and loves the openness of the range, and he loves the outdoors. One reason is because he was such a sickly child that he had to stay in most of his childhood inside. He was always a smaller, sickly kid, and so he spent his life, being that there's always pictures of him with his fist raised on the bully pulpit. And so he becomes a very aggressive type of personality. The things he had done, of course, is he was a police chief in New York. He was the governor of New York. He was a hero, the Battle of San Juan Hill. He had moved up, had several jobs, and he was on a political uptick. His only problem was, as I highlight here, he was a thorn in many of the powerful politicians' side of the time. So they decide that why don't we put Teddy Roosevelt as the vice president to William McKinley in 1900, because that's a dead-end job. And let's just hide him there and keep him under our thumb. And he reluctantly did so. However, from your reading, you discover William McKinley gets shot. He's assassinated. And Teddy Roosevelt becomes president. And that's not what some of the movers and shakers, such as J.P. Morgan and others, wanted. So one of the things that his presidency stands for is the trust. And that, the trust, as defined on 627, are basically mergers. And so we have people putting deals together in order to have great power over the market. And the best way was to merge rival firms together. And their motive was not to, usually when there's a merger, it's to get lower cost. This was not to get lower cost. This was to eliminate the competition, thus creating a monopoly, thus creating control over your market, which means control over your market is you can control pricing. You can control inputs because you're the only game in town. And so this seemed to be very corrupt to TR. These mega companies are starting to reduce or eliminate competition. So he used the Sherman Antitrust Act, and the government began suing these monopolies and breaking them into smaller companies. I really want to stress this last line. Teddy Roosevelt was not anti-business. Many times in government, government people do not understand private business. People who have never been in business or worked for a private business or run a business, they think business is bad. They don't understand profit loss. They don't understand purchasing inputs. They're just ignorant when it comes to business. And so then they turn to business and they treat business as the enemy. Please do not misunderstand that Teddy Roosevelt was not anti-business. He was a capitalist. He just thought that these businesses were being corrupt by getting their power, and it would eventually reduce competition, which would hurt the consumer. So no longer could a company have so much power that they could abuse. So he's only going after these megas that abused smaller businesses, abused getting deals done, abused consumers. And so he was sticking with the mantra, let's get rid of corruption before it hurts the consumers anymore. So he was the trust-busting president. That's one thing most people know about Teddy Roosevelt. He's a trust buster, but we're not sure. Historians are not sure how much the government should be involved in trust busting. But Teddy Roosevelt, being the aggressive person that he was, he went after these trusts legally through the Sherman Antitrust Act. He sued, he went after the abusers, and he broke up giant firms such as Standard Oil. And here's something else. When Standard Oil gets broken up, John Rockefeller becomes wealthier because of that. So it's not like a breakup was ending the business. It would just make it smaller and more easily for other companies to compete. So, as your book points out, DuPont, American Tobacco, and he wanted to get rid of the predatory wealth. Not wealth. He wasn't proposing everybody should make the same amount of money. He was talking about predatory wealth, which means you get wealth because you extort it somehow. He was all for you being wealthy as long as you're a fair trader. And again, this is during the progressive period where we're looking for causes. So that was Teddy the trust buster. Teddy the conservationist. If you look on the map on 631, look at all the national parks, national forests, wildlife is going to be protected, beauty is going to be preserved. If you've ever gone west of the Mississippi, maybe you could make that a goal of yours, because when they talk about big sky country, it is really impressive. And so he felt like everyone should enjoy that. So under the Public Lands Commission, some of this became public-owned land. In fact, if you take a look up in the northern part of the country, right underneath where the words on 631 is Canada, you see the Teddy Roosevelt National Park. I have been there. It is huge. It is huge, and it is impressive. And you can also see the Badlands. I visited that. And again, if you like nature, that'd be a great trip. While gas prices are still low, that'd be a great trip to take once we get through this pandemic deal. So, Teddy Roosevelt, the conservationist. And we also have the consumer protection. I want to point out the book, The Jungle, written by Upton Sinclair, reveals Muckrakers exposed terrible food conditions. That's what muckrakers did. They exposed problems. And the reaction when people read about it was really supposed to be about worker conditions, such as people getting hurt on the job, still working, no bathroom breaks. They're being fairly abused in the meat packing industry. However, what the takeaway was when people read the book was they're like, I can't believe that there are rats in our meat. There's defecation. There's all kinds of problems. And so as a response, you get the Meat Inspection Act. You also get the Pure Food and Drug Act. So these things have to be inspected by the government before they're able to be sold. So again, that's a reform to get rid of, disease and improper medicines out there, improper foods. And so that happens during the Roosevelt era. And lastly, the Square Deal. In 2004, Roosevelt's going to call his program the Square Deal. So you're talking about 116 years ago. And during that time, the last 100 years or so, we have many presidents. The Square Deal was about safety, fairness, getting rid of corruption. Teddy Roosevelt was known as the trust buster. He was known as the common man's president. And so that was all packaged in his branding of the Square Deal. Now we see that the domestic agenda for most presidents will have a name like that. So FDR, when he gets elected president during the Depression, he's going to have the New Deal. JFK is going to have the New Frontier. LBJ is going to have the Great Society. And so this branding works for TR, so other presidents are going to follow suit. So that's about a little bit about our man, TR. And as we start to wrap up chapter 20, looking forward a little bit, we'll be taking a look at the Spanish-American War. I always found it odd. We talked about TR as the president during the Progressive period, but then in 21, we're going to go back, or we're going to talk about him in the pre-president. We're going to talk about him in the Spanish-American War. So that 21 is an interesting chapter. However, I'll conclude with saying that now that you finished reading, now that you had a little tutorial on TR, now that you've completed a couple things this week, take a look. I'm going to share a video with you. And then tomorrow will be your chapter 20 final grade. So take a look at that, complete it, take a look at the due date I'll send to you. And so just make sure you're staying on top of things. I appreciate you guys reaching out during the Google Meet. You only have to do that if you have a question, but I will be here. I'll start the Google Meet at the beginning of each period for about 5 minutes or 10. So keep up the good work, and I will see you guys later.